So, picture this for a second. You are driving down a busy road.
Okay.
The radio's playing, you're, I don't know, thinking about what you're going to make for dinner, or maybe you're rehearsing some awkward conversation you have to have at work tomorrow.
Oh, yeah, we all do that.
Right. And you approach an intersection, and in your peripheral vision, you just sort of register this bright red light, and without you even actively, consciously thinking about it, your foot lifts from the gas pedal, moves over, and presses down on the brake.
It's totally automatic.
Exactly. You stop, and then a minute later, that light turns green. And again, without even interrupting your train of thought about dinner, your foot just moves back to the gas. You go.
Yeah.
It's seamless. You're essentially this complex biological machine just being perfectly puppeteered by colored lights on a wire.
It's funny because it feels completely innate when you describe it like that, almost like breathing. But if you really break down that exact moment, it's the result of a highly specific, deeply ingrained, and heavily reinforced learning history. I mean, you certainly weren't born knowing what a hovering red orb meant.
No, definitely not. And that invisible force, the one guiding your foot from the brake to the gas, the one that dictates so much of what we do every single day, that is exactly what we are digging into today. So welcome to the deep dive.
Glad to be here for this one.
Today, we are opening up a massive stack of study materials. We are pulling directly from the Behavioral Intelligence Con Mara Sánchez BCBA exam prep series, alongside some incredibly dense mock exams, and, of course, the foundational, heavy-hitting Cooper text.
Oh, Cooper. For anyone entering the field of behavior analysis, the Cooper text is the absolute Bible.
It is.
But let's be honest, reading it can sometimes feel like trying to drink from a fire hose.
Oh, absolutely.
The language is just incredibly precise, which, is necessary for science, but it can be super overwhelming when you're trying to synthesize it for a high-stakes exam.
Which is exactly our mission for you today. If you're prepping for your boards, or if you're just, endlessly fascinated by the hidden matrix of human behavior, we are going completely under the hood of Domain B. Specifically, Section B.12 identify examples of stimulus control.
That's a big one.
It really is. So we're going to translate all that academic jargon into the exact, practical insights you need to ace this section. No information overload, just clarity. So, okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
Before we even look at a single multiple choice question, we have to understand the fundamental mechanics. Why does a behavior happen reliably in one specific environment but completely vanish in another?
Right. Well, to pass the exam, you have to be able to spot the formal definition of stimulus control in a lineup. Technically speaking, and this is the textbook definition here, stimulus control occurs when the rate, latency, duration, or amplitude of a response changes in the presence of an antecedent stimulus.
Okay, see, I read that exact sentence in the source material and my eyes immediately glazed over.
A lot of words.
It is. Let's translate that into reality. An antecedent stimulus is just, it's something in the environment that happens before the behavior, right?
Exactly. Before the behavior.
So essentially, stimulus control just means a specific behavior happens a lot more often or maybe a lot faster when a certain thing is present in the room compared to when that thing is absent.
That is the perfect real-world translation.
Yeah.
Our environment is constantly bombarding us with stimuli, sights, sounds, smells, people.
Yeah.
And our behavior is constantly shifting based on which of those stimuli are currently active.
So if we go back to the driving analogy for a second, is stimulus control basically just a behavioral traffic cop? The environment is just endlessly throwing up green lights and red lights for different behaviors?
I love that analogy, honestly, because it maps perfectly onto the highly specific terminology you're going to see on the BCBA exam.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, the exam uses very particular labels for those lights. The green light is known as the discriminative stimulus, and you're going to see it written out as an S with a little superscript DSD.
SD. Okay, so that is the green light. It basically tells you, hey, if you do this specific thing right now, it's gonna pay off.
Exactly. It signals that reinforcement is currently available for a specific behavior.
Right.
But a green light is only meaningful if there's also a red light.
Right.
So the red light is the stimulus delta. On the test, it's written as an S with a little triangle, the Greek letter delta, S delta.
Okay, got it.
And the S delta is a condition indicating that reinforcement is not available for that behavior.
It's the ultimate don't even bother signal.
Yeah, pretty much.
If I emit the behavior when the S delta is present, I am going to meet extinction. Nothing good is going to happen.
Right.
Or worse, I might meet punishment. Like if I cross the intersection when my light is red, I don't just, not get where I'm going. I get T-boned by a truck.
Which is a very effective, albeit severe, punisher.
Definitely.
And over time, because of those drastically different outcomes, you learn to only emit the behavior pressing the gas pedal when the SD, the green light, is present.
Okay, I understand the mechanism there, but here's what I want to push back on.
Sure.
How does a completely neutral object, like a literal piece of plastic emitting green light, suddenly become this almighty behavioral traffic cop? Because it's not magic. Like an alien landing on Earth wouldn't instinctively know a green light means go.
Right. No, it wouldn't. It all comes down to the individual's learning history. And the specific mechanism that builds that history is called differential reinforcement.
Differential reinforcement.
Yeah. Think about those two words. Differential, meaning we treat things differently based on the situation, and reinforcement, meaning we are strengthening a behavior.
So an SD only gets its power because of my past experiences. I only learn that a stimulus means reward if I have consistently, repeatedly experienced a reward in its presence.
Yes. And crucially, you must have experienced no reward or extinction or punishment in its absence.
Oh.
That contrast is the secret ingredient. That is what creates the discrimination. Your brain learns to tell the difference because the consequences were fundamentally different.
That makes a lot of sense.
I mean, our brains are incredibly efficient. Frankly, they're kind of lazy.
Mm-hmm.
We want the maximum payoff for the minimum effort.
Always.
So if an environment teaches us that pulling a lever when a blue light is on gets us $1, but pulling it when a red light is on gets us nothing, our brain quickly learns to conserve energy and only pull during the blue light.
Well, wait, hold on. Let's go back to the car.
Okay.
If I see a green light, my foot moves to the gas pedal so fast and so automatically, it honestly feels like a reflex. Like a doctor taps on my knee with a little hammer, my leg kicks out, I see a green light, my foot steps on the gas. Isn't the SD just forcing the behavior to happen?
This is a fantastic point to bring up because it is a major pitfall on the exam.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It feels automatic, but an SD absolutely does not force behavior.
It really feels like it does, though.
I know, but let's test that. If you are sitting at a green light,
Mm-hmm.
but your car is completely out of gas,
Mm-hmm.
or the engine is just blown, are you still physically forced to press the gas pedal over and over again?
Well, no. I'd probably be hitting the steering wheel in frustration, to be honest.
Exactly. Now contrast that with a true reflex. If a doctor hits your knee, your leg kicks. Doesn't matter if you're tired, happy, sad, or, out of gas.
Right.
Respondent conditioning,
Mm-hmm.
which is reflexes that forces behavior. But stimulus control is operant conditioning. And SD merely offers a probabilistic guarantee. It's an invitation.
An invitation, I like that.
Yeah, it says, based on your history, if you do this, a consequence will follow. But the individual still has to want the reinforcement.
Ah, I see. Okay, so if I see a glowing neon sign for a pizza place, which is an SD signaling that pizza is available inside, I am not physically dragged by an invisible tractor beam into the restaurant.
Sadly, no.
Right. The
Yeah.
signal is there, the food is available, but if I just ate a massive Thanksgiving dinner, I'm going to walk right past it.
Exactly.
So the SD signals availability, but it doesn't change how much I actually value the reward in that moment.
That distinction is so vital. And now that we've established how learning history builds these signals through differential reinforcement, we really need to bridge this theory into practice.
Okay.
Because the BCBA exam is going to test your ability to spot stimulus control in everyday situations, but also in highly structured clinical settings.
Let's start with the everyday examples from the study materials, because once you see this, you really cannot unsee it in your own house. The classic example is a ringing telephone.
It's a perfect illustration. You don't just randomly pick up your phone, hold it to your ear, and say hello when it's just sitting silently on the table.
Unless you're pretending to be busy.
Right, right.
But yeah, the ringing sound is the SD. It signals that the behavior of answering the phone will be reinforced by hearing someone speak on the other end.
Yes.
And a silent phone is the S delta for answering. It's the universe saying, don't bother picking that up, nobody's there.
Another everyday example from the mock exams involves a pedestrian crossing a busy street. When you stand at the crosswalk, the greenish-white symbol of a person walking illuminates.
The walk sign, yeah.
That symbol is the SD. It signals that the behavior of stepping into the street will be reinforced by safely reaching the other side.
And the solid red hand is the S delta, because if you step into traffic when the red hand is up, you are not going to be reinforced with a safe crossing. You're going to meet horns, screeching tires, or worse.
Exactly. Now, let's take those same principles and move them into a clinical applied behavior analysis setting.
Okay, let's do it.
The exam relies heavily on discrete trial training, or DTT, to test your understanding of stimulus control.
Let me see if I can set up a DTT example, and you tell me if I'm tracking here.
Go for it.
Imagine a therapist is sitting across from a learner. The therapist places 4 letter cards on the table. Let's say A, B, H, and J.
Okay.
The therapist looks at the learner and gives the instruction, point to B. In that exact millisecond, the spoken instruction combined with the letter B card becomes the SD.
You are spot on.
Yes.
Because pointing to the B is the only behavior in that moment that will result in praise or a token or, whatever the reinforcer is. It signals availability.
And simultaneously, the letters A, H, and J instantly become S deltas. Like, if the learner points to them, it results in extinction or an error correction procedure, no reinforcement.
Perfect. The sources also emphasize a specific type of task that shows up frequently on the exam match to sample tasks.
Oh, right.
And this introduces a layer called conditional discrimination.
Conditional discrimination. Okay, let me try to puzzle this one out. The learner is shown a sample stimulus, let's say a picture of a carrot.
Okay.
Then they're presented with an array of 3 comparison pictures, a carrot, a beet, and a radish. So because the sample they were shown first is a carrot, the matching picture of the carrot in the array becomes the SD. Pointing to it gets the reward.
Correct.
And the beet and the radish become the S deltas. But here is the conditional part. If the therapist had initially shown a picture of a beet as the sample, the roles instantly swap. The beet in the array becomes the SD, and the carrot becomes an S delta.
That is exactly why it's called conditional. The discriminative stimulus changes based on the presence of another, broader stimulus.
Okay, that makes sense.
It's not just always point to the carrot. It is point to the carrot on the condition that I showed you a carrot first.
Got it. Now, understanding these clean, perfect textbook examples builds a great foundation, but anyone who has looked at a BCBA mock exam knows they are notorious for tricky wording.
Oh, absolutely brutal.
Right. The test isn't just checking if you memorized flashcards, it's probing to see if you really understand the underlying mechanics. Which brings us to one of the biggest pitfalls students face when identifying stimulus control.
Confusing an SD with a motivating operation, or MO. It is incredibly common, and the test makers know it. They will test you on it.
I can completely see why our brains blur them together, though. Both SDs and MOs are antecedent variables. They both happen before the behavior occurs. And they both evoke behavior, meaning they both make a specific behavior more likely to happen right now. So if you're staring at a dense, paragraph-long, multiple-choice question, how do you mathematically separate them?
The study materials offer a brilliant way to separate them, using what they call the marathon runner scenario.
Oh, I like this one.
It's great. Imagine a runner who has just finished a grueling 26.2-mile race in the summer heat. They have been running for hours, sweating profusely, and they are intensely deprived of water.
Like their biology is screaming for hydration.
Exactly. That internal state of extreme water deprivation is the motivating operation, the MO.
Okay.
What an MO does is alter the value of a consequence. In this moment, water has become the most highly valuable reinforcer in the world to that runner. He'd probably trade their car for a bottle of water.
But just wanting water, no matter how badly, doesn't magically make water appear?
No.
The MO doesn't tell the runner where to go to get it.
Precisely. So the runner is highly motivated, they're searching frantically. Then, 50 yards up ahead, they spot a white pop-up tent with a big blue sign that says Water Station.
Okay.
Seeing that Water Station is the SD.
Because the tent signals availability?
Yes. The SD signals availability. Water is located right here. If you approach this tent and reach out your hand, you will be reinforced. The MO changes the value. I need water right now to survive.
So let's play with the variables to make it even clearer. If the runner was fully hydrated, let's say they just chugged a gallon of water right at the finish line and have 0 MO, they would walk right past that water station.
Yep.
The SD is still sitting right there, brightly signaling that water is available, but without the MO, the behavior of getting water isn't evoked. There's no value.
Right. And on the flip side, imagine that same dehydrated runner is lost in the middle of a desert. No tents, no signs, no oasis. The MO is incredibly high. The value of water is astronomical. But because there is no SD to signal availability, the specific behavior of walking over and grabbing a cup isn't evoked because there's nowhere to do it.
You need both.
You need both the MO and the SD to truly understand why a behavior is occurring at a specific moment in time.
Wow. Okay, so if you're taking notes for the exam, here's the golden rule to apply to every question. Ask yourself, is this stimulus making the person want the item more? If yes, you are looking at an MO.
Sabara?
Is this stimulus telling the person how or where to get the item they already want? If yes, you are looking at an SD.
That framework alone will save you on at least a half dozen questions. It's so important.
Let's move to another area where the lines get blurry. We just talked about the environment setting up the perfect green light. But what happens when a learner zeroes in on the wrong green light? The sources talk about faulty stimulus control, and I find this fascinating because, honestly, we all do this. We really do. Our brains process roughly 11 million bits of information every second.
That's insane.
But we only consciously process about 40 bits. Because of that massive bottleneck, we are cognitive misers. We look for shortcuts.
We just scan for the quick cues.
Yeah, exactly. We scan for quick cues to tell us what to do so we don't have to expend mental energy analyzing every single detail.
But sometimes that evolutionary shortcut backfires. The mock exams use a classic elementary school math example that perfectly illustrates this.
Right, the addition problem. Think about a student learning addition. Through dozens of worksheets, they figure out a shortcut. They realize that whenever they see the words in total at the very end of a word problem, the correct action is always to add the numbers together.
So the phrase in total has inadvertently become the SD for the behavior of addition. They aren't actually reading the story about apples and oranges anymore. They're just scanning for the trigger phrase.
Which works until it doesn't, and that is faulty stimulus control.
The teacher eventually hands out a trick question. Karine and Amanda have 8 candies in total. Karine eats 2 of them. How many candies does Amanda have left?
Oh, that's brutal. That is a mean trick.
It is.
So the student's brain goes into shortcut mode. They scan the paragraph, their eyes lock onto the words in total, and they immediately take the numbers 8 and 2, add them together, and proudly write 10.
Exactly. Their behavior was under the control of an irrelevant stimulus. They successfully discriminated the phrase in total, but they completely failed to discriminate the actual mathematical operations required by the broader context of the story.
So on the exam, if you read a scenario where a learner is responding consistently but incorrectly because they are hooked onto a weird environmental cue like, I don't know, a dog who only sits if you hold the treat in your left hand but ignores you if it's in your right hand, you're looking at faulty stimulus control.
Yes, the left hand became the SD instead of the verbal command sit. It's a feature of our efficient brains, just, misapplied. This actually leads perfectly into the final major trap the exam sets up, which is testing the boundary between stimulus generalization and stimulus discrimination.
Oh, right, because they're basically two sides of the same coin, aren't they?
They're essentially two ends of the same behavioral spectrum. Generalization is about a behavior spreading, and discrimination is about a behavior narrowing. The Cooper text and the mock exams use a very relatable developmental example, a toddler named Amy.
Let's set the scene for Amy. So Amy's father has a big, bushy beard. She looks at him, smiles, and says, "Dada!" Her father lights up, picks her up, spins her around, and gives her massive amounts of attention.
That is heavy differential reinforcement right there.
Yep.
And if she looks at her mother and says, "Dada," her mother probably says, "No, sweetie, I'm mama." So Amy learns to narrow her response. She learns to discriminate. Dad equals Dada, mom equals mama.
That is stimulus discrimination. But then Amy goes to the grocery store with her parents. She's sitting in the shopping cart, and she sees a random man in the produce aisle picking out avocados. And this man also happens to have a big, bushy beard.
Oh, no.
Yeah, Amy points right at him and yells, "Dada!"
Which is funny and slightly embarrassing for the parents, but behaviorally speaking, it is a perfect example of stimulus generalization.
Right.
Amy has taken the reinforced response of saying Dada and spread it to a completely new, untrained stimulus.
Why?
Why? Because the man in the produce aisle shares similar physical properties with her actual father, the beard.
The beard is the key.
Yeah.
So the exam is going to test your ability to read a scenario and determine, has the response spread to similar stimuli? If so, that's generalization.
Yeah.
Or has the response been correctly narrowed down to only the appropriate stimulus? If so, that's discrimination.
Exactly.
And it's important to frame this correctly, right? Generalization isn't inherently a bad thing.
Not at all. In fact, it's essential for survival. We want generalization when we teach a child to read the word stop on a little white flashcard in a classroom, and they can then walk outside and successfully read a giant red octagonal stop sign on a street corner.
Oh, absolutely. If they couldn't do that, they'd be in trouble.
If we had to explicitly teach every single iteration of a stop sign in the world, learning would be impossible. But in Amy's case at the grocery store, it's considered an error because the stimulus class hasn't been properly discriminated yet.
So what does this all mean when we put the pieces together? If we zoom out from the specific flashcards and mock questions, mastering domain B.12 for the BCBA exam means recognizing the intricate, invisible dance between a specific signal in the environment, a specific behavior, and a history of consequences.
Beautifully said.
It is understanding that behavior does not happen in a vacuum. It happens because the environment has systematically taught the learner's brain that this specific green light means go.
It really requires looking very closely at the antecedent conditions. And as you continue studying, this raises a much more complex question for you to mull over.
Ooh, leave it with a cliffhanger.
Well, everything we've discussed today assumes a relatively clean environment. We talked about what happens when one SD signals reinforcement. But the real world is messy.
Very messy.
What happens when a learner is presented with two completely conflicting SDs at the exact same time?
Oh, that's interesting. Like two competing traffic lights telling you to do opposite things.
Exactly. Imagine a middle school classroom. The teacher stands at the front of the room and says, "Okay, everyone, open your math books." That instruction is an SD signaling that the behavior of reading will be reinforced with a good grade or praise.
Right.
But right next to the student, a peer leans over and makes a hilarious face. That peer is an SD signaling that the behavior of joking around will be reinforced with social attention and laughter.
Two valid SDs, two totally different behaviors evoked in the exact same second.
So the question to explore in your next study session is, how do we determine which stimulus actually wins control of the behavior? What happens when one stimulus masks the effects of another or overshadows it completely?
Masking and overshadowing.
Yep. Understanding those dynamics is the next evolutionary step in mastering stimulus control.
That is a brilliant thread to pull on, because remember, preparing for the BCBA exam is a marathon, not a sprint. You have to pace yourself, understand the why behind the concepts deeply, and avoid just memorizing terms that will evaporate the second you sit down at the testing center.
Yes, please don't just memorize.
You need to be able to see the SDs, the S deltas, and the MOs operating in the real world around you.
Once you understand the mechanism, you will start seeing these behavioral traffic lights everywhere.
And as you navigate this matrix of behavior, you do not have to do it alone. We enthusiastically invite you to continue this deep dive by following the rest of the BCBA study series on behavioral intelligence con Mara Sánchez. We are going to keep breaking down these dense domains into clear, actionable insights.
It's going to be a great series.
It really is. And for even more expert-tailored guidance on your journey, we highly encourage you to connect with Amethyst Therapy Services. They are an absolute powerhouse of resources for anyone navigating this field.
They really are. They truly understand the nuance of this science and how to apply it beautifully.
So true. You can explore their tools at www.amethysttherapyservices.com or reach out to them directly with questions at info@amethysttherapyservices.com.
Highly recommend checking them out.
So the next time you are driving and you see that red light turn to green, take a split second to appreciate the incredible power of your own learning history. It's not just a light on a wire, it is years of differential reinforcement silently guiding your every move. Keep studying, keep observing the world around you, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.